Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Iliad and Odyssey was written by Homer during the ancient Greek literature, where epic poetry, lyric poetry, and theater are the literary devices that were used by the authors, which they also developed the oratory. And in Greek epic poetry, the Iliad and Odyssey stand out as the classic of this genre. These works are known as epics because they sing the exploits of Greek heroes. Ancient Greece was a civilization belonging to a period of Greek history from the Greek Dark Ages of the 12th to 9th centuries BC to the end of the Antiquity. This era was immediately followed by the early Middle Ages and the Byzantine period, roughly 3 centuries after the late Bronze Age collapse of Mycenaean Greece. Greek urban polis began to form in the 8th century BC, ushering in the Archaic period and colonization of the Mediterranean basin. The history of ancient Greek literature may be divided into three periods: Archaic, Classical, and Hellenistic and Greco-Roman. Archaic period to the end of the 6th century BC. Homer was presumed as the most influential writer of the two epic poems that became the most foundational in the works of ancient Greek literature. And although people don't know when Homer lived, but it is probably known that he played a significant role in the information of literature of ancient Greece. The author's background. The author's name is Homer, known as the greatest ancient poet, the blind poet of classical Greece, and generally considered to have come before his word. He is said to have two daughters and no sons. One of the first generation of authors who were also literate, as the Greek alphabet was introduced in the early 8th century BCE. The Iliad and Odyssey are epic poems composed by the Greek poet Homer. They are complex works with many interwoven plotlines, highly developed characters, and fascinating in setting. These stories describe events of the Greek Bronze Age, during which many foundations of Greek culture were first established. The Iliad and the Odyssey blend events from Greek history, mythology, and culture that reveal the unique worldview of this ancient civilization. Homer used the archaic version of Ionic Greek with a mixture of some dialects just like Aeolic Greek. Aeolic Greek is also known as the Lesbian or Lesbic Greek that some of the people in Greece use this as their dialects. Place and time written is unknown, probably in mainland Greece around 750 BC, and the date of publication is also unknown. The Iliad influenced various writers, plots, characters, and forms of storytelling, and because it was really famous and very influential back then until now, during those times, a student cannot graduate or finish his course without reading or knowing the Iliad of Homer. In terms of influences in cultural, political, historical, in cultural, for us readers, it's really unusual to think that the author of Iliad was blind. But there are researchers that have their theories that although or perhaps Homer was really blind, but perhaps he had this vivid imagination that pushed him to express his words into poetry. And probably what influenced that imagination and what leads that imagination is by his experience. So in terms of cultural, it talks about what happened in Greece during those times and what are the major and common problem of Greek during those times. And in terms of political, it could be generally about um, government, administration, leadership, and politics itself. But in specifically, I think it's all about uh, a person as a political being, how a person lead himself and decide for himself in his way. And in terms of historical, I guess it's all about in culture, in norms, what about the rules? Because of course, before you have to follow the rules when it comes to literature. So in history, it it talks about the culture, the norms, and the beliefs of the people during those times. The theme of the story. First is the rage as the main theme of the story because it has a huge impact in every character, especially when Achilles felt dishonored by Agamemnon because Agamemnon took his war prize concubine as the condition of agreeing to give Chryses back to Apollo. Next is the war and peace. One of the reasons why there is war because of conflicts and interest, but one of the toughest reason why there is war because people are craving for the peacefulness of the city. Next is the honor. During the Trojan War, as a soldier, it is an honor to perform in a combat because a soldier to protect the city in the battle is an honor for a soldier. Next is the compassion because as the supporting theme in the Iliad. Because the growth of compassion that shows in the story is the proof that even in the uncertain battles and challenges in life, love and compassion will live on. Next is the futility, life, death, heroism, and glory. The heroism can be found in Achilles and Hector because during those times, heroism starts with the man who's strong, altruistic, has a compassionate figure, and has the capability to protect people, to protect the city, and to be followed by people. The character of the story. Achilles is the protagonist of the Iliad. Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, the Greek forces in the Trojan War. The goal is to recover the abducted Helen of Sparta. Next is Diomedes. Next is Helen, the daughter of Zeus, considered the most beautiful woman in the world. Her abduction with the Trojan prince Paris was the reason of Trojan War. Next is Paris, the prince of Troy, who stole the Helen of Sparta. He is not a skilled warrior but he is responsible for the death of Achilles. Next is Andromache, the wife of Hector. Next is Hector, the prince of Troy, the greatest fighter and de facto leader of the Trojans' forces during the Trojan War. Next is King Priam, the youngest son of the Trojan king. Next is Odysseus, the king of Ithaca. Next is Aphrodite, the goddess of love and the daughter of Zeus. Next is Ares, the goddess of war and the son of Zeus, lover of Aphrodite. Next is Apollo. Athena, the goddess of war, the powerful ally of the Greeks and the protectress of Odysseus. Artemis, the sister of Apollo, the goddess of hunt. Hades, the god of the underworld. Poseidon, the son of Cronos. Thetis, the sea goddess, the mother of Achilles. Zeus, the son of Cronos, the most powerful among gods. Time setting is the Bronze Age, begins 9 years after the Trojan War, and the Trojan War happens around the city of Troy. Tone is awe-inspired, ironic because as stated, it occurs when a character like Agamemnon makes declaration or assumption that the readers know that is untrue. Lamenting happens when Andromache firstly saw the corpse of her husband Hector, and pitying happens when Apollo protects the body of Hector from harm and decay. The story covered by the Iliad, which begins nearly 10 years into the siege of Troy from the Greek forces led by Agamemnon. King Peleus and Thetis, the sea goddess, were the parents of Achilles. When they are married, all of the gods and goddesses were invited except for the goddess of discord named Ares. Ares felt dishonored, so she tossed for the fairest one. Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite each claimed the prize. They chose the handsome and unworldly man to decide which was the fairest. Paris chose Aphrodite. So Aphrodite promised to give the most beautiful woman alive, which is Helen. But the problem is, Helen is already married to the king of Sparta, Menelaus. So Paris abducted Helen. Menelaus asked help for his brother Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, the most powerful ruler during those times. They were quarreling about whether or not to return the Trojan captive Chryseis to her father Chryses, the priest of Apollo. Agamemnon refuses and threatens to ransom the girl to her father. The reason the offended Apollo flogs them with pestilence. Achilles, on the other hand, forced Agamemnon to return Chryseis to appease Apollo and end the pestilence. But Agamemnon takes Achilles' own war-prized concubine after he agrees to give Chryseis back. Because Achilles felt dishonored, he wrathfully withdraws both himself and his Myrmidon warriors from the Trojan War. And together with the other kings, they mounted an expedition against Troy to reclaim Helen of Sparta and to fall the city. The war lasted 10 years until the city of Troy was finally taken. The moral message of the Iliad is that having the courage to fight gives the man's life honor and meaning, but that war itself is tragic. While Homer emphasizes honorable exploits of brave warriors, he also does not shy away from showing the human cost of war. So the author shows that it's okay to have fight because you have your reason. But whatever your reason is, you have to ask yourself if that reason is really worth fighting for. The sequel of the Iliad is the Odyssey. It is all about the poem cycled about the king of Ithaca, Odysseus, and what happened throughout his journey of coming home after the fall of Troy. That really took him around 10 years just to reach Ithaca again after the 10-year Trojan War. When Odysseus are far away, there are men chasing his wife Penelope. When they arrive Lotus eaters, Odysseus' men get drugged up by eating lotus flowers. Odysseus blind Polyphemus, the Cyclops, son of Poseidon. Odysseus meets Sire, who turns the crew into pigs. Odysseus goes to the underworld for directions to home and meet his dead friends there. Odysseus managed to survive the siren's song through tying himself to the mast of his boat. More crew's members were killed by the monsters Scylla and Charybdis. The crew eats the cattle of Helios and is punished with a storm that kills them all because Odysseus' companion steals the oxen and eats them. He became Calypso's sex slave for 7 years, and when he finally arrived to his home, he disguises himself as beggar and wins Penelope back and kills a lot of her suitors. The themes of the story is hospitality. Hospitality because the basic root of the story, because he is relying in different hosts just to go back in Ithaca. Loyalty because whatever the challenges, whatever the offer, he still managed to be faithful and loyal to his wife, and also Penelope is being loyal to his husband Odysseus. Deception and dissimulation because when he realized to survive his journey by deceiving other people through his tricks and manipulation. The tone of the Odyssey evolves to somber and mournful to joyfully excited as Odysseus gets closer to completing his quest. The characters are Odysseus, Telemachus, Penelope, Athena, Poseidon, Zeus, and Calypso. The moral of the story is all about loyalty, compassion, self-control, and perseverance. So now that we ended our story, it was clear to us that we observe that the immortal gods and goddesses are portrayed as characters in the Iliad. They displayed individuality and will in their actions. At the same time, the gods and goddesses were also stuck in religious figures like allegorical, psychological, and during those times, the relation to human was very complex because it's not just because they know what future brings, they also predict human actions and also their fate. And because people that time was seeking their fate, the principles of actions of human contradicted to their will in cosmos. They are often used as a way of explaining how or why the event happened, but somehow they are also used as a comic relief from the war, mimicking, parodying, and mocking mortals. In the book of Iliad, the authors have shown that the gods and goddesses brought a huge influence why contradiction was experienced by human. But despite of uh, although everything was changed and contradicted by the wills of the gods and goddesses, a man has still the right to choose what way he want to live in his life. So that's it for my report. Thank you for listening.